Millennia-old vampire Klaus from the Originals had no choice but to use his charms to accompany his neurotic ex-girlfriend on a shopping trip. Klaus lies that he has never forgotten her. To win Aurora's trust and dismantle the alliance of the vengeful trio, Klaus had to play along, but as a man who's been single for almost 1,000 years, Klaus had no tricks up his sleeve other than taking Aurora out to dinner. He even took her on a walk through a graveyard. Aurora finally lost her patience. She bluntly exposed Klaus, saying that he didn't love her at all. He just wanted to figure out whose side she was really on. Seeing his plan falling apart, Klaus had no choice but to pull out his ultimate move. He took Aurora back to the Originals mansion and led her to a wall. He smashed the bricks, revealing a painting. It was a portrait Klaus had once painted of Aurora. This was his way of proving his centuries-old affection for her, and it finally made Aurora let her guard down. Overcome with emotion, she kissed Klaus passionately. Soon after, they blissfully explored the harmony of life together, but Klaus didn't seem too happy. The bad day was far from over. Freya informed everyone that Rebecca had met a tragic fate. Klaus quickly learned of the news. Aurora then revealed that she had planted someone in Tristan's camp to take Rebecca away and hide her. She explained that she didn't want her Originals to be controlled by anyone else. Then, she invited Klaus back to bed to continue their pleasures. Klaus's expression grew even darker.
Do me a favor. Throw your blade at her pretty face.
Camille woke up in a mansion, unaware that this was just the beginning of a very unlucky day. In front of her was a box full of dark magic items left by her uncle. Lucien needed to find a specific weapon within it. He couldn't compel Camille because her body contained vervain, but facing a powerful vampire, Camille had no choice but to comply. She began searching through the box. Kinney, forced into submission, prepared food, though he was irritated by it, saying he'd rather stick a dinner knife into Lucien's throat. Camille told Kinney that vampires can compel humans to do anything they want. This revelation shattered Kinney's materialistic worldview. Lucien, not wanting to argue further, ordered Kinney to slash his brachial artery. Kinney complied, and blood immediately gushed from his ankle. Lucien demanded that Camille hurry up, or she'd have to watch Kinney die. When Lucien returned, Camille informed him that she had found the weapon he was looking for and urged him to save the now-dying Kinney. Lucien obliged, offering his blood to Kinney. Camille then pulled out a skull, suggesting that the weapon Lucien wanted might be hidden inside. Lucien picked up the small skull, but was soon tormented by the green light it emitted. Camille takes the opportunity to grab a dinner knife and prepare to fight back, but her nervous heartbeat betrays her and she is quickly grabbed by Lucien's wrists. This move infuriated Lucien even more. Lucien ordered Kinney to slit his own throat, and seeing this, Camille had no choice but to hand over the real weapon to Lucien. Lucien smashed open a wooden box and pulled out a small disc with intricate patterns. With his objective achieved, Lucien did not spare Kinney. He compelled Kinney to forget the whole ordeal and cursed him to remain perpetually lost, unable to find the right direction in his investigation, dooming him to a life of utter failure. As for Camille, she had to be imprisoned until the vervain was flushed out of her system, after which she would be hypnotized to forget everything that had happened. Meanwhile, Haley had single-handedly captured an 800-year-old vampire. Marcel recognized him as someone named Shen. They decided to torture Shen for information, pressing him on why he had been following Haley. Elijah received a call from Marcel, but the usually calm Elijah's expression changed the moment he heard Shen's name.
Marcellus, do I need to remind you that Shenmin was known as the Red Sorrow before he was a vampire? You execute him immediately.
Despite falling into enemy hands, Shen did not surrender. This gave Marcel the perfect excuse to take him out. But Shen, an 800-year-old vampire, was incredibly powerful. Not only did he break free from his restraints, but he also took on both of them without breaking a sweat. In no time, Shen had both Haley's and Marcel's hearts in his grasp. At this critical moment, Elijah arrived, driving a wooden stake into Shen's chest. Elijah demanded to know why Shen was following Haley. Shen revealed that Haley was helping Davina gain power, which was obstructing their plans. They needed Davina to activate a weapon powerful enough to challenge the Originals family. Elijah pressed him to reveal what kind of weapon it was, but Shen declared that he would rather die than talk. And then, breaking free from his restraints, he stepped into the sunlight, swiftly removing his daylight ring. To extract information, Klaus didn't hesitate to flirt with his ex-girlfriend. Although Klaus's eyes were filled with hatred, He had no choice but to continue playing the intimacy game with Aurora to find Rebecca's whereabouts. The family was urgently discussing their next move. Freya's locator spell had lost its effectiveness. Marcel decided to deal with Davina's crisis first. When Elijah returned home, he was shocked to find Klaus getting cozy with Aurora. He gently reminded his brother that he was playing with fire, but Klaus said he was taking a calculated risk.
Well, it is a bold, somewhat lecherous plan. Will you employ the same tactic when it comes time to retrieve the medallion from Lucien and Tristan?
They're not really my type.
The two decided to host a Thanksgiving version of a trap-filled banquet to break the alliance between Aurora and Lucien, and then take them down one by one. Haley also wanted to help, but Jackson urged her to stay with their daughter. Haley didn't want to sit idly by and wait. They parted on bad terms. Meanwhile, the vengeful trio who received the dinner invitation were not idle. Aurora found Tristan and mysteriously handed him a note, saying it was her turn to protect her brother. Lucien also summoned a strong vampire and instructed him to keep an eye on Camille. If he didn't return safely from the dinner, he told him to kill Camille. Amid the festive atmosphere, guests of the Originals family began to arrive. Aurora was catching up with Lucien when Klaus suddenly intervened, taking his ex-girlfriend's hand. The faces of both men darkened instantly. In the tense and eerie atmosphere, the hosts and guests took their seats. Aurora, Lucien, and Tristan repeatedly claimed they were there to protect the Originals family, but one had already tricked Camille into giving up a mysterious weapon, another had been causing a series of murders in the city, and the third had hidden Rebecca away. Tristan admitted that the murders on the streets were orchestrated by his vampire organization, with the goal of controlling the local vampires by crippling the tourism industry. Klaus then deliberately revealed that he and Aurora had rekindled their romance. The vengeful trio began to develop cracks in their alliance. Aurora confessed that she had sealed Rebecca away in a deep-sea location, with her and Tristan each holding part of the coordinates. Even Lucien was shocked. The Originals brothers were appalled by Aurora's cruelty. Klaus slammed the table and stood up, but Tristan had already held a fork to Freya's throat. Without hesitation, Elijah got up and slammed Tristan against the wall. Lucien, unbothered, reminded them that he had Camille as a hostage. Aurora was jealous. Freya knocked Aurora out with a single move. The three siblings quickly divided their tasks. Elijah would deal with Tristan, Klaus would handle Lucien. Freya wanted to have a chat with Aurora. Their two adversaries were busy keeping their secrets while playing mind games with the Originals brothers. Aurora, however, was more concerned about who Camille, the woman Lucien was using to threaten Klaus, was. And she mused that Haley, the mother of Klaus's child, wasn't that pretty after all. Haley's punch quickly brought Aurora back to reality, but the plan to divide and conquer had little effect, and the seven of them found themselves back at the dining table. Klaus raised his glass to lighten the mood, then casually remarked that he had never thought his brother's banquet plan would work. Without another word, Klaus twisted Tristan's neck, threatening Aurora with a life-for-life deal, demanding she bring Rebecca back in exchange for Tristan. Aurora, enraged, accused him of betraying their vows to each other, angrily tearing off the tablecloth and storming out. Klaus ordered Lucien to take him to Camille and hand over the weapon. Meanwhile, Camille, who was being held captive, hadn't been idle. As usual, she used her gift of gab to trick the vampire guarding her into letting his guard down. Seizing the moment, she chopped off the vampire's finger that bore the daylight ring, trapping him in the shadows, and then quickly dashed for the exit. But just as the unlucky Camille reached the elevator, she was met by Aurora's furious face. Jackson was furious too. Once again, he felt that the Michaelsons were more important to Haley than he was, so he left her and returned to his cabin in the bayou. Elijah looks at the devastated dining room table and realizes that this is an image from the Doomsday Prophecy. From being an admired harvest witch to being abandoned and deposed by her ancestors. What kind of emotional journey did this 16-year-old girl go through? At first, the elders deceived her, telling her that the harvest festival required only a drop of blood from her palm, and in return, they would gain the powerful magic of their deceased ancestors, making her the most powerful harvest witch. Davina naively believed them, but when she saw her friends' throats slit one by one, she realized that the so-called sacrifice was actually the death of 4 young lives. Though the witches claimed they would be resurrected, her fear of death and distrust of her loved ones drove her to seek refuge under the wing of a vampire, viewing her own kind as a cult and even helping Marcel fight against the witch community. Yet, fate played its first cruel joke on her. The harvest festival, filled with blood and lies, was real. The power of the other 3 harvest witches had been absorbed into her. If she refused to die, the 3 girls could not be revived. Her immense power began to wreak havoc on the whirlwinds. Storms, earthquakes, and fires plagued the once peaceful and beautiful city. Not wanting to see more lives lost because of her, she tearfully and selflessly accepted her death. But fate had a second cruel joke in store for her, a relentless elder which stole their chance at resurrection, trapping her on the other side of death, where she was tormented and punished by the spirits of her ancestors. The ancestors condemned her for surrendering to the enemy, but none understood the betrayal she felt as a young girl deceived by those she trusted most. Only Marcel, the enemy, cared about her fate. No one knows what she endured during those months of death, but fortunately, she was finally resurrected. In her ongoing battle with the Michelson family, she lost 2 boyfriends in succession but also gained the courage to stand against the Originals. To get revenge on Klaus, she took the risk of resurrecting Michael, the most powerful vampire hunter in history, and then, together with Cole, crafted a dagger capable of sealing Klaus away. Her formidable witchcraft earned her the position of the young regent, finally giving her a chance to bring her boyfriend back to life. But fate's third cruel joke arrived right on schedule. Her boyfriend's ashes were secretly swapped, and the altar she had carefully prepared produced an unfamiliar witch. She had been deceived by the Originals, with even Marcel among the accomplices. Alone and with no one to rely on, she had no choice but to take up the mantle of leading the witch coven by herself. But can there be a place for her in the game of power? And can this young girl resist the temptations that come with it? Opponents within the witch coven openly challenged her, and she was nearly burned alive in front of everyone. She chose to arm herself and defend her authority, using the power of werewolves to slaughter her enemies. Yet afterward, she hid in a corner and cried alone. She wore the scarf of the previous regent. Hoping to earn the respect of her people, she armed herself with an iron-fisted policy, forgetting that her original intention was simply to bring her beloved boyfriend back to life. A warlock openly threatened to erase her from the witch community. A powerful vampire organization also set its sights on her, wanting to use her power to activate a special weapon. Marcel informed Davina of this, hoping to take her away from the danger, but Davina said that she was no longer the little girl hiding in the attic. She now had the strength to protect herself. Seeing Davina refuse his offer, Marcel turned to Vincent, asking him to use any means necessary to save Davina from the impending crisis.
There might be a way to get her out of trouble, but you ain't gonna like it.
Vincent quickly found Davina and coaxed her into revealing the truth about the witch killings. While Davina was distracted, Vincent set up a ritual circle, transmitting Davina's words exactly as they were to the waiting family members of the victims outside. Davina was accused of murder and was deposed in front of the crowd, rejected even by the spirits of the deceased ancestors. She fell from being an admired harvest witch to a reviled traitor and murderer. As Davina stepped down from her pedestal, the witches turned their backs on her, a gesture of both contempt and disregard. From that day forward, the name of Davina would no longer be spoken in the land of New Orleans. Where did she go wrong? Was it in refusing to die from the start? Aurora handed her blood to the young man beside her, who drank it down, and then she swiftly snapped his neck. The dead man would soon be reborn as a vampire, and the human girl before him would become his first meal. What could make a 1,000-year-old vampire hate a human girl so intensely? The answer, of course, was Klaus. Klaus watched on surveillance as Aurora took Camille away, thoughtfully leaving him an address. Klaus was furious. Lucien, unwilling to let the Originals face danger alone, decided to accompany him. The two followed the directions to a street. Lucien couldn't understand why Klaus was so concerned about Camille. To him, she was just an ordinary human girl. He urged Klaus to calm down, suggesting they at least come up with a foolproof rescue plan, but Klaus was convinced that his charm had completely won over Aurora. Aurora might kill every woman he cared about, but she wouldn't dare harm him. Klaus caught a glimpse of a painting, his gift to Camille. He took the painting in his hands and found a small green object hidden behind it. Aurora was directing him to the church. At that moment, Aurora was boasting about her sweet past with Klaus, even mocking Camille for never having kissed him. Faced with Aurora's taunts, Camille responded with unwavering composure. Compared to Aurora, who was obsessed with romance, jealousy, and bitterness, Camille appeared calm and wise. Camille pointed out that Klaus still had a good side within him, while also questioning Aurora. She suggested that the reason Aurora was so concerned about Klaus's feelings toward her was because, deep down, Aurora feared that Klaus didn't love the dark and broken version of herself. Camille's words hit on Aurora's deepest fear, and in response, Aurora resorted to violence. Lucien is still trying to persuade Klaus, saying that he might as well let Camille die so that no one will know about Klaus' weaknesses. Irritated, Klaus snapped Lucien's neck, Aurora demanded to know Camille's deepest secrets, determined to prove that this girl wasn't as pure and righteous as she seemed. Camille reluctantly confessed that she had once heard a thug in college who was bullying her roommate, and deep down, she had enjoyed the violence. Klaus arrived late, trying to reassure Aurora that she didn't need to see Camille as an enemy because Aurora had always been the love of his life. Hearing Klaus's heartfelt confession, Aurora angrily accused him of lowering himself to be satisfied with someone like Camille. Camille interjected, subtly signaling Klaus with a micro-expression. Camille suddenly headbutted Aurora, then collapsed to the ground. Klaus seized the moment and dragged Aurora outside without hesitation. Aurora, blinded by her own fantasies, had never truly understood Klaus's feelings, stubbornly believing that she was his true love. Klaus finally grew tired of the game, telling Aurora that he had long since left her behind, and now he was more weary of her than ever. As Aurora was heartbroken, Klaus took the opportunity to invade her mind and quickly uncovered the secret hidden in the note. He learned half of the coordinates for where Rebecca was imprisoned. Klaus coldly declared that Aurora was no longer of any use to him. Meanwhile, Camille woke up to find the newly turned vampires eyeing her hungrily, knowing they needed to feed or they would die. She broke off a wooden stake for protection, but was soon tackled by one of the vampires. The stake plunged into the vampire's chest, but more vampires were ready to attack. Fortunately, Klaus arrived just in time, saving Camille from the threat. Camille pushed the vampire aside and got to her feet. Aurora's twisted game had inadvertently brought Camille and Klaus closer together. They embraced tightly. No words needed between them anymore.